Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Let's go ahead and pray, and then let's go ahead and start our discourse into chapter 11. Let's pray. Our Lord, thank you so much just for this opportunity. Thank you for your word and the wisdom it gives us. Pray, Lord, that this would be instructive and profitable for us as we go through the details, as we've continued to do so throughout this book, and glean the knowledge and the information that you have for us. For it's in your Son's name. Amen. Okay, I have to be honest with you guys. I have not been looking forward to this. Not because I don't like this book. I love this book, but because uh, there's lots of information here. And I want to be very accurate in my analysis of this book, but these two chapters are somewhat daunting to me. Um, yeah. um, because and I was telling Will that at the end of this, we're going to have a timeline that's probably about, I don't know, maybe as big as this wall, perhaps. Because there's so much detail, so many moving parts, right? Lots of lots of intrigue, of course, lots of drama. I mean, if Netflix wanted to produce a show, they'd have tons of information. They could just pull from here. It would be very intriguing. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump in. We're going to be looking at all of two verses this morning. Let's go ahead and review where we are, at least from the historical perspective of Daniel in chapter 11. We are at Cyrus the Great's rule, right? We are right smack dab in the middle of here. Whoops, right smack dab in the middle of here, right here. And at this time, the kingdom of Babylon has fallen. That is, the Babylonian kingdom, and the rise of the Persian Empire is taking place. Okay? We have been zooming into Cyrus the Great's rule because, again, this is around the time where Cyrus is the king. And the Persian kingdom is reaching its peak here. Also, in between here, we have to discuss Darius the Mede. Darius the Mede is a co-regent of the city in the region of Babylon. Okay, so while Cyrus is doing his thing, Darius is basically overseeing again the systems and the activity of Babylon in the place of Cyrus's authority. So, our review from last week is we have completed the prologue. Chapter 10 is all prologue. That's what it's all about here. It introduces us to the one man who comes with glory and power and strength, majesty, right? This seems to be the modus operandi or the MO of what happens when a person or a being receives a message from God, right? Daniel is experiencing the same thing. Daniel, of course, being very fearful of this one individual encouraging him, telling him not to fear, and begins to start to tell him essentially that he's going to give him a message, right? And this message concerns his people in regards to the future. Let's go ahead and jump into our first statement here from Daniel chapter 11. Here we go. In the first year of Darius the Mede, I arose to be an encouragement and a protection for him. We must not forget that the one who is talking is the one man. Okay? It is not Daniel. Daniel is listening to this. So the one man begins to give Daniel a specific time marker. Remember this time marker here. They've been matter of fact, almost in every chapter we've seen this. We've seen time markers here. We should be used to this, right? Again, this time connects back to chapter 5 of Daniel. Chapter 5, verses 29 to 31, to be specific. Okay? Remember this. This was the time where Belshazzar was the last, essentially, co-regent of Babylon under Nabonidus. Nabonidus was the last ruler. In Daniel chapter 5, verse 29 to 31, it says this. Now, this is the inscription that was written out. Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. This is the interpretation of the message. Mene, God has numbered your kingdom and put an end to it. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found deficient. Perez, your kingdom has been divided and given over to the Medes and Persians. Then Belshazzar gave orders, and they clothed Daniel with purple and put a necklace of gold around his neck, and issued a proclamation concerning him that he now had authority as the ruler in the kingdom. They were trying to save the kingdom. It's essentially what they were doing. And that same night, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was slain. So Darius the Mede received the kingdom at about the age of 62. As soon as he took over the region of Babylon, it would appear that this one man was sent to Darius the Mede, this angelic being. Again, Cyrus installed Darius again as vice or co-regent in the city of Babylon in 539 BC. And according to Daniel's historical account, he was 62 years of age, according to the text, the historical narrative. At the same time, he was installed as the co-regent of Babylon. This was around the time the one man who came to tell Daniel this message was sent to Darius to be an encouragement or protection for him. If you recall, again, Darius more than likely did not last. He did not rule long, only for about a year, which is kind of interesting. So Darius the Mede really probably, he ruled for a year and probably died around winter of the following year. Let's look at it again. In verse 11, in chapter 11, verse 1, it says that the one man was sent to be an encouragement and a protection for him. The word encouragement is chazak, or translated encouragement. This is the Hebrew word here, chazak. This Hebrew word occurs 290 times in the Hebrew scriptures, 13 times in the book of Daniel. Depending on the context that it is found in, it could be translated the following ways. Strong. It could even be translated as repair, to fix or restore something that's damaged. Or to hold, as in the form of protection. Or to strengthen something. This word refers essentially to be a support or to establish something. The reason why we know that is because of the stem that it is written in. Again, there are different types of stems, and those stems give us an indication of how to translate this particular word and how to understand it. It is in the Hefil stem, which again is the causative of the verb or the action in the sentence. So he was sent to Darius the Mede, and as a result of this sending, he became a support for Darius, this one man. Okay? But he was not only a support to him, he also said that he was his protection as well. In verse 1, he says, I arose to be an encouragement and a protection for him. Maotz is the Hebrew word for protection. 37 times it occurs in the Hebrew scriptures. 8 times it occurs in the book of Daniel. It is translated or understood to mean protection or fortress or even a defense against a threat. Again, this underscores the resistance and the security that this one man gave to this vice regent of Babylon. This one man was sent not only to support him, but to protect him also, to serve in this case. So, this one man, according to according to his account, actually, this one man was sent for the sole purpose of being a support and security or protection for the Median ruler of Babylon. Right? Remember, Babylon's the focus here, which once more is associated with the prophecies that were given to Daniel concerning the Gentile rulers. Remember Daniel 2, Daniel 8, with these kingdoms that would rise and fall. He was sent for that reason. Now we get to the hub of the matter. As the one man has spoken his intentions in the first statement of why he is in the region that he is in, he begins to lay out the message to Daniel. He goes, "And now I will tell you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings are going to arise in Persia. Then a 4th one will gain far more riches than all of them. As soon as he becomes strong through his riches, he will arouse the whole empire against the realm of Greece." The one man begins to start to tell Daniel the message after he tells him why he's there in the first place. He begins to give details concerning what Daniel was petitioning the Lord for. Now, this particular statement, this was kind of my first challenge here. I have to be honest with you. Because look at the way that this is written. He says, "And now I'll tell you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings are going to arise in Persia. Then a 4th will gain far more riches." There was a question I had in my mind. Is it 4 kings after Cyrus, or is Cyrus one of the 4? That was one of the questions that I had. Okay. And one of the reasons I had this was because of this word here. 3 more kings. So, and you have to understand that, Daniel is within the reign of Cyrus, right? That's why he's getting all this. So I looked at some commentaries. You know how we love commentaries, Will. Yeah. And there were 2 commentators that had 2 different perspectives. Ugh. One of them said that Cyrus was a part of the 4, and another one said that he wasn't. They didn't give any linguistical reasons as to why. They just kind of counted, It says more, so we'll just start from Cyrus and then work forward. So which one is it? Is Cyrus one of the 4, or does the count start after him? I think this word gives us a clue here. Let's take a look at this word. Od is the Hebrew word for more. This word occurs 488 times in the Hebrew scriptures and 6 times in the book of Daniel. Do you know that this particular Hebrew word is translated more 1 time? What? Why would they translate it more? What? I don't understand this. The word itself, that is od, it can be translated still yet and again. Does that look like more to you? It does look like more to me. It's only translated more in this text. Everywhere else it's translated still, it's translated again, it's translated yet. But it's only translated more here. I don't get that. This word that is ode speaks of anticipation or something that is going to repeat in sequence. Okay? So, I am not convinced that the sequence of kings starts after Cyrus. It starts with him. Okay? He is the first king. And still 3 more kings will come after him. Does that make sense? So it doesn't, when Cyrus dies, the numerical sequence doesn't start. It starts with Cyrus, because Cyrus is not only the ruler of Persia, but Cyrus is the new ruler of Babylon. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's break down this statement in statement 2, because there's a lot here, even though there's one statement here, one verse. First, it tells us that 3 more kings will arise after Cyrus. Okay? And the location of these kings are given where they will arise. They will arise in Persia. That makes more sense because we're talking about the Persian Empire, right? Then it says that there will be a 4th king. The reason why this is written the way it is because this 4th king, by the way, Rabi'i is the word for 4th here. The reason why it's written the way it is because this 4th king is of significant interest. Okay? So 3 more kings will arise after Cyrus. You have 4 kings, but this 4th king is very important. Okay? Why? Well, the text tells us in verse 2 of chapter 11, it tells us this 4th king will gain far more riches than the previous 3, even Cyrus. Okay? It can also be presumed that this king is also Persian, since his riches are compared to the other 3. And then we have that the riches that he has, it says the Persian Empire at the time of the 4th king's rule will be against Greece. Look at this here. Verse 2 says, and now I'll tell you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings are going to arise in Persia. Then a 4th will gain far more riches than all. As soon as he becomes strong through his riches, he will arouse the whole empire against the realm of Greece. So after this king gets all of this wealth and all of this influence and all of this prominence, he's going to stir the whole empire against the Grecian Empire. He's going to seek to conquer it. Okay? This 4th king. It doesn't mention that about the other 3. This 4th king specifically. So there will be 4 kings that will arise from the kingdom of Persia. Again, Cyrus the Great is the first king in this sequence. It is not after him. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So first, let's take a look here. Cyrus the Great, 559 to 530 BC. Now, you know that when we begin to start to address kings, we have to do some case conceptualizations. We got to talk about each of these kings. We got to do it. Okay. I'm sorry. I know, I do want to get through this book by this decade, but we have to do it, right? Because the scripture mentions these individuals. Let's look at Cyrus the king, very briefly here. We've already reviewed Cyrus, but just to bring us up to speed. Cyrus went on to conquer Lydia between the conquering of Ecbatana and Babylon. Lydia and this city, Ecbatana, were both political powerhouses at the time, okay? If you wanted to conquer a land, you needed political power. And so Cyrus sought to consolidate that power under the Persian Empire with conquering these two places. And of course, Babylon in 539. He went on to conquer other lands and extend influence well beyond the borders of Persia, which is modern-day Iran. Most of the lands, again, that he would amass, Cyrus, they would just give it up, no problem. They would come in and he goes, I'm here to conquer you. And they would go, okay, fine, no problem, They would just surrender. Again, remember, it said that at the height of his reign, 530 BC, it is said that he ruled at least 2 million square miles of land. Huge property, huge real estate. And again, the historical account in the Hebrew scriptures mentions Cyrus the Great by name. Isaiah mentions him, as a matter of fact. Jeremiah mentions him, and that he would give permission for those in captivity to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the city and the temple. We see this again in Isaiah. We see this in 2 Chronicles. We see this in Ezra. And then when it comes to the book of Daniel and Cyrus the Great, again, we come across interesting tidbits of his rule within the chapter. So, the first king in the sequence is Cyrus the Great. He ruled for 30 years, 559 to 529 BC, respectively. Still, 3 kings will arise. Not more. Still, 3 kings will arise within this sequence. The second king to arise within the Persian Empire is a king by the name of Cambyses II. 529 BC to 522 BC, only ruled for 7 years. He is the second king within this sequence because he comes after Cyrus. He arises to power in an interesting way. Cambyses was born to Cyrus the Great and his wife Cassandane. So he is related to Cyrus. As a matter of fact, he was actually, even though Darius the Mede was a vice-regent of Babylon, Cambyses was actually known as the crown prince of Babylon. So he was because he was progeny to Cyrus the Great, he was kind of over Darius. So you had Darius, who was the ruler of Babylon, and then you had Cambyses, who was the crown prince. Now, Cambyses is mentioned in the Cyrus Cylinder. Remember the Cyrus Cylinder? We talked about the Cyrus Cylinder. As a matter of fact, the Cyrus Cylinder mentions Darius the Mede by the name of Gobryas. Okay? Cambyses is mentioned in the Cyrus Cylinder. It is mentioned that Cambyses received blessings from Marduk. Remember old Marduk? Remember that false deity? He just keeps popping up. The god of Babylon, Cambyses was known as the king of Babylon, while his father was known as the king of the lands. So his son, again, was mentioned again as the overseer of Babylon with, of course, Darius the Mede. And, of course, Cyrus the Great was known as the king of the lands, the king of all the lands, essentially. So when his father died, of course, he's going to ascend the throne. So the first years of his reign for Cambyses was very uneventful at the time. However, a year after his reign, there was kind of a famine between 528 and 526. And a lot of the people, because there was this famine, believed that he probably wasn't supposed to be the ruler, because that's what happens when you have natural disasters. They tend to attribute that to, well, I guess the gods must be punishing us, right? This is kind of how it goes. So Cambyses at the start, they really were kind of doubting whether or not he should have been king in the first place because of this famine. In 525 BC, a year after the famine ended, Cambyses invaded Egypt. So he went down south and claimed claiming that, again, the pharaoh broke an arranged marriage. Cambyses and the Egyptian and kind of the Persian Empire were supposed to be unified. And usually you did that by marriage. I guess the pharaoh said, no, you're not marrying my daughter. No, forget that. So Cambyses decided to invade Egypt as a result of that. He probably wanted to take it anyway, but that was a viable excuse. In August of 525 BC, Cambyses entered into the Egyptian capital, claimed himself pharaoh, basically conquered that capital, claimed himself pharaoh, gave himself an Egyptian name, and even took part in Egyptian festivals. He basically did almost the same thing his dad did when he entered into Babylon. There were possibly some revolts in Egypt and uprisings, so he kind of took care of those. And it was mentioned, and it was stated in history that he was on his way from Egypt. He installed like kind of another co-regent there, and he began to head back to essentially his homeland in 522 BC, and he died. That's it. We don't know how he died. History doesn't tell us. He just died. I believe he was assassinated, to be honest with you. There was a lot of intrigue. You know what I'm saying? It kind of took his brother-in-law spot, you know what I'm saying? Killed a couple of cousins, things like that. And so there was an uprising with another individual, some identity fraud going on. I mean, it was a whole big thing. Some greaseball stuff. Well, anyway, he died, and his reputation deteriorated after his death. So he died a very shameful death. Okay? I don't think a lot of people liked him. They think they just tolerated him for most part. Now, what about Cambyses II in Israel? Because remember, this is about his people, right? Well, Cambyses did not have direct contact with the Jewish people at the time. All right. But it is believed that he was supportive of the Jews that remained in Babylon, insofar as that, they didn't uprise or do anything, outlandish. And he also promoted the rebuilding of Jerusalem and the temple, just like his dad, right? Just like his father. So in terms of, rebuilding Jerusalem and things like that for Israel, he was like, as long as, they don't cause any trouble or anything else like that, I'm cool with that. Right? That's number two. Then we have, and I think I might have made an error here. Yep, I did, but that's okay. We'll clean it up. Darius from 522 to, I forgot the date, but it's on the next slide, so don't worry about it. Darius is now the next in the sequence. His rule is kind of interesting too, particularly how he became king. Let's talk about him. Darius was born in 550 BC during the rise of Cyrus the Great. As a matter of fact, during Cyrus's reign, Darius took the position as a governor. So when he grew up, Cyrus installed Darius as a governor during the reign of Cyrus and Cambyses' reign of Bactrian Persis. Persis, again, is the capital of Persia. It is believed that Darius became the spearman of Cambyses. Remember when Cambyses went to Egypt? Darius was with him, right? So he took him along as the spearman, the guy who kind of holds the spear for Cambyses. I don't know why you would need a spearman. Can't you hold your own one? You can hold your own spear. But he had that particular position. Apparently, it was a prominent position to have, right? Kind of like the cupbearer, but nevertheless. Okay, so the way that they chose, the way that Darius became king was kind of odd. Okay, so due to some intrigue, I'm not going to give you the full skinny of this and bore you with this, but there was some intrigue, some double crossing, some backstabbing. That seems to be the norm here. All of it kind of culminated to a contest. It was between, I believe, Darius and three other individuals, right, who were jockeying for the position of king of Persia. Okay, so what they did was they set up a rather unusual contest. So in the morning, each of them would stand by, I guess, their horses. So all of them owned horses, and they would stand by the front of them individually. And whatever horse neighed first determined the king of Persia. I mean, no sword fighting. You know what I'm saying? No, we'll race you for it. Rock, paper, scissors, maybe. No, they stood in front of the horse, and whatever horse neighed first, that was the king. And of course, they accused him of cheating, right? They accused that his servant took his hand and rubbed it on the horse's genitals and had him smell it, and that's how he got him to neigh or whatever. Weird stuff, right? In 519, Darius went on to secure the lands of Egypt. So he went back into Egypt and secured the lands, consolidated his power, and incorporated into his empire. A year after that, 518 BC, he conquered parts of India. And another important campaign was Scythia in 513 BC. However, that campaign went unsuccessful. I already had that one. Darius won due to his loss of the Greeks in the Greco-Persian War, sought to prepare another invasion. But this did not happen because he died shortly thereafter that. Darius I also took on huge construction projects. He was a builder. In Persepolis, he included military quarters, a treasury, the king's quarters, a guest house. He also completed the construction projects that Cyrus did not finish and that Cambyses did not get to. He also built temples and palaces throughout Egypt. He restored temples that were destroyed in Egypt. So he was a builder of sorts. He also introduced a new monetary currency, which essentially made it easier to collect taxes. And of course, that resulted in increasing revenues in their treasury. Okay? So he was very busy. Again, Darius I, just like Cambyses, just like Cyrus, he allowed the building of Jerusalem and the temple to continue. Yet, because all rulers seem to be so full of themselves, he also demanded sacrifices be made to Darius as a common practice of tribute. And of course, divine favor, because after all, he's the ruler, right? It is not known if Israel and the Jews participated in this, but nevertheless, historically, this is what happened, particularly those in other regions. Okay, so we have Cyrus the Great, 30 years, Cambyses, 7 years, Darius I, 36 years, from 552 to 486 respectively. Then we get to king number 4. That is Xerxes. 586 to 465 BC, 21 years his reign. This completes the 4 here. Let's continue. Xerxes, now we've already reviewed again some of Xerxes' accomplishments, but let's do it again for the purposes of this lesson. Xerxes was born in 519 BC. His mother's name was Atossa. Atossa was the daughter of Cyrus, and his father was Darius. Darius I, the one that we just looked at. Xerxes was again not the eldest son, but he was the firstborn son of Atossa and was the chosen successor to Darius. This makes complete sense. Okay? Now, Xerxes did have a half-brother who attempted to try to claim the throne. But again, he was rejected because his mother was not of royal blood. She was a commoner, right? A peasant girl, and not royalty. So he was disqualified. He married a woman named Amistris, and from her had 5 children: Darius, Histostapes, Artaxerxes I, Achaemenes, and daughter Amadis, and Rodune. Again, there were many things that occurred during the time of his rule, such as the expansion of his kingdom. And at the same time, there were also many revolts that needed to be addressed. Again, one of the biggest ones were Egypt. Imagine that, right? When Darius consolidated power, Egypt was having some problems. And Babylon. Babylon did not care too much for Xerxes. They didn't care too much for him. Now, again, Cyrus the Great had been a close ally and friend to Babylon, right? As a matter of fact, Babylon welcomed Cyrus the Great, but not so much with Xerxes. Even Darius kind of had a good relationship with Babylon, but not so much with Xerxes. Okay? Xerxes had invaded Babylon, took the gold statue of Marduk, remember, melted it down and put it in his treasury. Okay? And of course, this was a disrespect to the priests of Babylon, as the priests of Babylon would lay their hands on Marduk as a symbol of prosperity and blessing and favor and all that, right? But when he came down and melted it, he essentially said, no, I'm the man now, right? You don't need to look to this gold statue, right? Now, Cyrus the Great and Darius the Great would officiate New Year's festivals with Marduk. However, Xerxes was indifferent to Babylon. He couldn't care less about any of their festivals, any of their celebrations, any of their, he couldn't care less. He ignored the allied relationships that Cyrus and Darius built, which probably costed him the Grecian Empire, probably, because he could have used them as allies, but he ended up ignoring them. And he referred to himself as the king of the Persians and the Medes. Again, Babylon rose up twice to Xerxes. And after the second uprising, he just went and subjugated them. Now, because of all of this intrigue and all of this power, all of this authority, all of this conquering and all of these things, Xerxes' riches far surpassed any of the rulers before him. In fact, the amount and quality of his wealth is recorded in Scripture with the book of Esther, chapter 1. Now, Xerxes is known as Ahasuerus. It says, now it took place in the days of Ahasuerus, the Ahasuerus who reigned from India to Ethiopia. It's a huge piece of land there. In those days, as King Ahasuerus sat down on his royal throne, which was at the citadel in Susa, in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all of his princes and his attendant, the army officers of Persia and Media, the nobles and the princes of his provinces being in his presence. And he displayed the riches of his royal glory and splendor of his great majesty for many days, 180. Imagine throwing a party for 180 days. That's a lot of days. That's a good 6 months. When these days were completed, the king gave a banquet lasting 7. So he extended the thing for all the people who were present. So he had, for 6 months, all of his attendees had this one party, and then he extended the party for 7 more days to everybody else. For all the people who were present at the citadel in Susa, from the greatest to the least in the court of the garden of the king's palace, there were hangings of fine white violet linen and cords of fine purple linen and silver rings and marble columns and couches of gold and silver, mosaic, just opulence all over the place. This, of course, was during a time of peace within the Persian Empire. So, right, what did he do after he amassed all this wealth? He turned his attention to Greece to conquer the region. Xerxes spent 4 years amassing weapons and supplies and trying to gather people to recruit as much as he could to conquer the land of Greece. And with all of those resources, all of that wealth, all of that power, all of these weapons, all of these people, he still lost. He still lost. He couldn't conquer Greece. What about Xerxes and Israel? Well, the relationship between Xerxes and Israel was ignorantly amicable at best. He was not a supporter or an opposer of Israel. We actually see this in Esther, right? The relationship between Xerxes and Israel, again, is detailed in that book. So it was ignorantly amicable. He didn't care one way or the other, right? He signed their death, didn't know he did it, right? And then he had to create a law basically so that they could defend themselves. We see that in the book of Esther. So again, Xerxes IV, just real briefly, historically he gained far more riches than the previous Persian rulers, and he became strong through his riches, amassing supplies, weapons, and supporters under the Persian Empire. The next king after that is Artaxerxes, which is his son. His son did battle against Greece, and he lost. The problem was that he didn't have the riches like his dad did. So he can't fit the criteria. He doesn't fit. It can't be Artaxerxes. It has to be Xerxes that fits this information. Tying it all together, we see this kingdom and the rise of this kingdom in Daniel 2 and Daniel 8. Concerning the statue and the ram. If we go back and look at chapter 8, verse 20, we will not do that because we're running out of time. But this fits even the prophetic information that was given in the previous chapters of chapter 2 and 8 concerning the rise of the Persian Empire. And let me tell you something. This is kind of cool as the final information I want to bring up. Is that the one man begins to tell Daniel information concerning the details of these Gentile kings. Ironically, Daniel would be alive to see all 4 of them. With Ahasuerus, he's just getting ready to die. Remember, Ahasuerus was mentioned in chapter 9, right before he died. So Daniel saw the rise of all of these kings, Cyrus, Cambyses, Darius and Xerxes right before he passed. That's incredible. Daniel saw the first two statements of the one man's message to him, the rise of these kings and their fall. That covers two statements in chapter 11. We will continue working through chapter 11 of Daniel next week, looking at some more details. Let's go ahead and pray. Lord, it is so awesome. Your word is so detailed. If we continue to stick to the method, we have nothing to fear. I thank you so much for this one man, this being that is giving this information to Daniel so that he may understand the position and the nature of his people and the preservation that you, the preservation of your people by your faithfulness all throughout this text. What a wonderful thing. Again, thank you so much for just who you are, and that everything, that you are the great author and the great designer of all things. For it's in your Son's name. Amen.